My name is Natalie Brooks, and I'm 39 years old. On the second morning of what was supposed to be our anniversary vacation in Charleston, South Carolina, my husband's coworker slid into our breakfast booth wearing the exact navy dress he'd once told me was his favorite color on a woman. She smiled before she even reached the table. "There you are," she said to my husband. Not to us, to him. Her name was Erica Collins. She ordered his coffee exactly the way he liked it. 2 creams. No sugar, extra hot. The waiter nodded before my husband ever opened his mouth. Then Michael laughed. Not an awkward laugh. Not a surprised laugh. The comfortable kind. The kind people only develop after repeating the same routine, together dozens of times. I'd spent 9 months planning that anniversary trip. I'd paid for my own flight because Michael insisted the company travel office handled his reservations differently. "It'll save us money," he'd said. "We'll just combine everything once we're there." My younger sister told everyone I had the strongest marriage she knew. 3 months later, I found a leather portfolio hidden beneath the false bottom of my husband's suitcase. 4 months after that, an entire executive department at his company was under internal investigation. And the strangest part? Nobody believed quiet, predictable Natalie Brooks would be the one who started it. If you've ever been told you're overthinking, if you've ever apologized for noticing details everyone else ignored, stay with me, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when the person everyone mistakes for the quietest, one in the room, turns out to be the one who remembers everything. Before Charleston, you need to understand who I was, because none of what happened afterward makes sense without it. I've worked as an internal financial analyst for Ridgeway Industrial Supply for 15 years. 4th floor, compliance division, the office with the windows facing the loading docks. My job is painfully ordinary. I compare reports. I reconcile accounts. I notice inconsistencies. Other people miss because most people stop looking after the totals match. I never do. Sometimes the numbers balance perfectly. And they're still lying. Michael worked in the same company. 6th floor, regional sales director. Everyone adored him. He remembered birthdays. He remembered children's names. He remembered waiters, receptionists, security guards, anyone who made people feel important. Michael made them feel unforgettable. He sold industrial equipment for a living. But honestly, he could have sold rain to fishermen. We met during a quarterly training seminar. I was 26. He accidentally spilled coffee across my expense report. He apologized 3 separate times, then sent flowers to my desk the next morning. Everyone said it was romantic. Looking back, I realize he wasn't apologizing. He was managing impressions. I simply didn't know the difference yet. We married 14 months later. For 13 years, I became known as the calm wife. If someone cut in line, I waited. If a waiter forgot my order, I smiled. If Michael canceled dinner because a client needed him, I reheated leftovers and told myself successful careers required sacrifices. My mother used to say something when I was little. Peace costs something. She believed loud women paid too much, so she taught me to pay with silence instead. It became a habit, then a personality. Then, without realizing it, a marriage. People often mistake quiet for agreement. They aren't the same thing. One simply makes other people comfortable. There was one person, one tiny detail, that should have warned me long before Charleston. Her name was Erica Collins. I first met her nearly 2 years earlier. Company holiday gala, downtown Columbus. Ballroom, full of crystal chandeliers and people pretending work wasn't work because someone hired a jazz band. Michael stood across the room talking with the sales department. I watched him throw his head back laughing. Before I even reached him, a brunette I'd never seen finished his story, word for word. Same timing, same punchline, like they'd rehearsed it. Everyone laughed. She reached over, lightly brushed imaginary lint from his jacket. Nothing inappropriate, nothing anyone could point to. Just comfort, easy familiarity, the kind that quietly grows when nobody thinks they're supposed to notice. Michael introduced us. "Natalie, this is Erica, our analytics manager." "Erica, my wife." She smiled warmly. "So nice to finally meet you." "Finally." Interesting word. I smiled back. "You've heard about me?" "Oh." She laughed softly. "Michael talks about you all the time." Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. At that moment, I believed her. Driving home that night, I asked one simple question. "How long has Erica worked with you?" "About 6 months." "You two seem close." Michael glanced at me with amused patience. We work together every day. That's what happens. Then he squeezed my hand across the console. You've got nothing to worry about. Such a strange sentence. I hadn't said I was worried. Still, something felt uneven. Not wrong, just off balance. Like a spreadsheet where every column totals correctly. But one invoice belongs to the wrong client. I tried to ignore it. For months. Then one evening, around 11, I woke up because the room glowed blue. Michael sat beside me in bed, typing rapidly. Everything okay? Work. Without hesitation, European distributor. Time zones. I nodded. Made sense, mostly, until I noticed he wasn't using email. He wasn't using text messages either. He was smiling. People rarely smile while answering European distributors at 11:30 at night. The next morning, I made my first boundary. Small, reasonable. I know work is demanding. But could we keep late-night messages to emergencies? Michael kissed my forehead. Of course. You deserve that. It sounded perfect. Until 2 weeks later, when I woke again, phone glowing. Only this time, it wasn't texting. It was the company's internal collaboration platform. Technically, he hadn't broken the agreement. He'd simply moved it. Looking back, Michael never violated boundaries. He redefined them. By spring, we barely saw each other. Client dinners, conferences, networking weekends, quarterly summits. Every month came with another reason. Then one Saturday morning, he stood in our kitchen holding 2 coffee mugs. I miss us. So let's disappear. Our anniversary. Charleston. No work. No interruptions. Just you and me. I wanted that version of us so badly. I ignored the question already forming in my head. He insisted the company travel office handle the reservations. Corporate discounts. Easier logistics. They do it all the time. I hesitated. Because company travel policies technically prohibited mixing business accounts with personal vacations, and I helped audit compliance against those policies. Michael smiled. It's just rate access. Nothing improper. Everyone does it. Funny, whenever someone says everyone does it, they're usually asking permission they don't actually have. I bought my own airline ticket anyway, kept every receipt. Old habit. Documentation comforts accountants. By the time June arrived, I convinced myself we'd fix things before they were ever broken. At the airport, Michael spent most of boarding answering messages. Still work? I asked. Just putting out fires. He smiled. Once we land, I'm yours. I believed him. I wanted to. Sometimes hope is less about evidence, and more about exhaustion. Charleston was beautiful. Historic streets, gas lanterns, salt air, everything couples are supposed to remember forever. The first day felt almost normal. The second began with breakfast. I wore the blue summer dress Michael bought me years earlier during our 10th anniversary. He said it made my eyes look brighter. I remember thinking, maybe this really was our fresh start. Then I reached the restaurant terrace. Michael was already seated. He wasn't alone. Erica looked up first. Oh, good. She smiled brightly. You're here. Like she'd been expecting me to arrive at someone else's breakfast. Michael stood immediately. Natalie. Great surprise. Erica's meeting a client downtown. Turns out they're staying here too. What are the odds? She laughed. I couldn't believe it either. Neither could I. The waiter approached. Without looking at the menu, Erica ordered. He'll have the smoked salmon omelet. Extra sourdough. Black coffee. 2 creams. The waiter nodded. Michael laughed. You know me too well. Then, as if suddenly remembering, he turned toward me. Oh, Natalie, what are you having? I looked down at my untouched menu. For reasons I couldn't explain, it suddenly felt like I was the guest, at my own anniversary breakfast. For a few long seconds, nobody spoke. The waiter stood patiently beside the table, pen hovering over his order pad. Michael smiled at me. What sounds good? Such an ordinary question. Except, his breakfast had already been chosen. Mine was the only order that still required discussion. I'll have fruit. I closed the menu. And tea? The waiter nodded. Erica tilted her head. That's all? I smiled politely. I'm not very hungry. That wasn't true. I suddenly couldn't imagine swallowing anything. Michael reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You okay? Of course. Tired from traveling? A little. He relaxed immediately. He'd always accepted the first explanation people offered. mostly because he expected everyone else to accept his. Erica launched into a story about one of their regional clients. Apparently, they'd spent 3 days together in Indianapolis a month earlier, then another conference in Nashville, then a supplier summit in Dallas. Each memory rolled naturally into the next. Michael finished her sentences. She corrected dates. They interrupted each other effortlessly. The conversation moved like practice choreography. I listened, not because I enjoyed it, because patterns reveal themselves if you stop trying to interrupt them. Halfway through breakfast, Michael excused himself to take a phone call. It'll only be a minute. He walked toward the courtyard, leaving me alone with Erica. For several moments, neither of us said anything. Then she smiled. I hope this doesn't seem awkward. It doesn't. It really was a coincidence. I'm sure. She stirred her coffee slowly. Michael talks about you all the time. There was that sentence again. Exactly the same wording. Exactly the same smile. Almost 2 years apart. Interesting. You two work very closely. I said it casually. We do. He trusts me. I'm lucky. Lucky. Another interesting word. Not close. Not respected. Lucky. She leaned slightly closer. Honestly, I don't know how spouses do it. Travel. Late nights. The pressure. I could never marry someone in sales. I smiled politely. I suppose every marriage is different. She nodded. It has to be. Then Michael returned. Conversation ended, as neatly as someone closing a folder. Later, walking along the waterfront, I finally asked, So, how often do you travel together? Michael looked genuinely surprised. When necessary. Several conferences lately. You've noticed? It seems like a lot. He laughed. Natalie, sales pays the bills. You know that. I know. I just didn't realize Erica attended quite so many. He shrugged. She's brilliant. Clients love her. Then he wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You aren't jealous, are you? The question landed strangely, because I'd asked about travel schedules, not feelings. That afternoon, Michael announced he needed an hour. Quick strategy meeting. Erica's client. They're using one of the conference rooms downstairs. Come to the spa. I'll meet you after. Again, perfectly reasonable. 1 meeting, 1 hour. Vacation interrupted briefly. Nothing extraordinary. I booked a massage. Or tried to. The receptionist apologized. I'm sorry. Our conference rooms are actually empty this afternoon. There aren't any corporate bookings scheduled. I smiled. Maybe another building? Perhaps. She checked again. No, not today. Interesting. I thanked her. Walked outside, sat alone overlooking the harbor. Didn't call Michael. Didn't confront him. Instead, I opened the Notes app on my phone. Created a new file. June 14th, 11:42 a.m. Michael said conference meeting. Hotel reports no conference rooms booked. That was all. Just one observation. No accusations. No conclusions. Simply, a record. People assume documentation begins after trust disappears. Actually, it begins because trust asks questions. That evening, Michael returned cheerful. Client signed. Worth the interruption. Now the rest of the trip is ours. I smiled. I'm glad. The next morning, we rented bicycles. Everything felt lighter. For several hours, we laughed. Stopped for ice cream. Took photographs. Watched dolphins from the pier. I almost deleted the note from the day before. Almost, because maybe I really had misunderstood. Then Michael's phone rang. He looked down. His entire expression changed. Not panic. Recognition. Warmth. He silenced it immediately. Spam. He slipped it into his pocket. 5 seconds later, the same phone vibrated again. This time, I saw the screen. Erica Collins. He declined the call before I finished reading her name. Didn't you say spam? I thought it was. She probably needs something. Shouldn't you answer? It can wait. He smiled. Vacation. Yet, 10 minutes later, he walked 20 yards away to take a quick call. That night, I couldn't sleep. Michael breathed evenly beside me. Around 1:30, his phone buzzed softly. He reached for it without opening his eyes. Someone accustomed to nighttime messages. I pretended to remain asleep. The screen reflected briefly across the ceiling. Not many words, just one notification. Room 814. Nothing else, no context. No explanation. Just room 814. The next morning, Michael showered before breakfast. Steam filled the bathroom. His suitcase sat open on the luggage rack. He called through the door. "Natalie, my blue blazer. Inside pocket. Can you grab it?" "Sure." I opened the suitcase. Folded shirts, shoes, laptop charger. Nothing unusual. Until I lifted the blazer. Beneath it, a slim leather document holder. Not hidden. Just placed carefully beneath the lining flap. I wasn't looking for secrets. I only wanted the jacket. The folder shifted slightly. A folded receipt slid halfway out. I reached automatically to stop it from falling. One glance. That was all. Hotel Harbor Crest. Executive Suite 8 and 14. Guest, Collins Erica. Length of stay, 5 nights. The same 5 nights as our anniversary trip. My pulse quickened. Not because she'd booked another hotel. Because at the bottom of the receipt, a billing reference caught my eye. 8 numbers, 1 department code, 1 authorization sequence. I knew that format. Better than I knew my own employee number. I'd reconciled it dozens of times. It belonged to Ridgeway Industrial Supply, Corporate Client Development. The company wasn't paying for Michael's room. It was paying for Erica's. I folded the receipt exactly the way I'd found it. Placed it back inside the portfolio. Returned the blazer. Closed the suitcase. By the time Michael stepped from the shower, hair still wet, smiling, I was sitting on the balcony, watching the ocean, holding a cup of coffee with perfectly steady hands. He kissed the top of my head. Ready for another beautiful day? I looked out across the water, and for the first time in our 13-year marriage, I realized I wasn't thinking like a wife anymore. I was thinking like an auditor. I didn't say a word. Not on the balcony. Not during breakfast. Not during the carriage tour Michael insisted we'd love. Not even when Erica waved at us from across the historic market as if running into us. For the 3rd time in 3 days was perfectly ordinary. Michael waved back. Comfortably. Naturally. Like people who had never needed to invent explanations. Most people think silence means surrender. It doesn't. Sometimes, silence is simply where evidence grows. We flew back to Columbus on Sunday evening. Michael slept for most of the flight. I watched the clouds outside the window and made exactly one decision. He would get one chance. One honest conversation. Nothing more. Tuesday night, after dinner, I laid the folded hotel receipt on our kitchen table. Michael looked at it. Then at me. Then back again. His face barely changed. That should have frightened me more than it did. "I found this." He picked it up casually. "Oh, that. Can you explain it?" "Of course." He smiled. "It isn't what you think." "Interesting." I hadn't told him what I thought. "It's Erica's hotel." "I know." "The company paid for it." "Yes. There wasn't any client conference." He leaned back in his chair. "Natalie, you're connecting dots that don't belong together. So explain them. It was easier to book everyone through corporate. Finance approved it. There was no issue. You can ask anyone." I watched him carefully. Not his words, his timing. Michael never answered questions directly. He answered the version that sounded easiest. "So, there wasn't a client meeting?" "There were meetings." "Where?" "Around town." "Which clients?" He laughed softly. "You sound like an auditor." "I am an auditor." Another smile. "Exactly. You're treating your husband like a spreadsheet." "No. I'm treating unexplained expenses like unexplained expenses." For the first time, the smile faded. Only slightly. "Natalie, you've been under a lot of stress." "There is no affair." "I didn't ask about an affair. You were obviously thinking it." Again, interesting. Every answer arrived before the accusation. "I asked about company money," I said quietly. He stared at me. For perhaps 3 seconds. Then he changed direction completely. "You know, this is exactly why people think accountants overcomplicate everything. It's one hotel bill." "No, it's one company hotel bill." He stood. Walked around the kitchen. Poured himself water. Buying time. Michael always moved when thinking. "You really want the truth?" "Yes." "Fine. Corporate booked the wrong property. They couldn't move her reservation. So they left it. End of story. You expect me to believe that?" He shrugged. "Believe whatever you want." Believe. Again. Not explain. Believe. The next evening, his mother called. Of course she did. Helen Brooks had perfected disappointment into an art form. She never raised her voice. She simply sighed until people apologized. Natalie, Michael tells me you've been worrying yourself sick. I'm fine. I'm sure you are. But men travel. They build friendships. Women misunderstand professional relationships all the time. I looked at my untouched tea. I didn't call about friendships. No? No. I called about accounting. Silence. Then, a small laugh. Oh, sweetheart. Don't ruin your marriage over paperwork. Funny, everyone kept reducing it. Hotel bill, paperwork, expense reports. No one seemed interested in why those papers existed. 2 days later, my best friend Allison invited me for coffee. She listened carefully. Really listened. Then finally asked, Nat, do you actually know he's cheating? No. Then what do you know? I answered without hesitation. I know someone is using company money improperly. She frowned. That's different. It isn't to me. Driving home, I realized something uncomfortable. Everyone assumed I was trying to prove infidelity. I wasn't. Not anymore. That question had quietly become secondary. Friday evening, Michael worked late. I stayed home. Opened our joint banking records. Perfectly legal. Perfectly ordinary. Both our names appeared on every account. I wasn't searching for hidden lovers. I was following money. Money rarely cares about emotions. Within 30 minutes, I found the first transfer. March, $3,500. Joint savings. Unknown investment account. April, another $5,000. May, $4,800. Always the same destination. Always described simply as future planning. Future planning. Interesting description. I downloaded 6 months of statements. Made coffee. Kept reading. Then, one payment caught my attention. A legal retainer. February. 3 days. Before Michael surprised me with our anniversary trip, Harrison and Cole Family Law. Initial consultation. Retainer paid $2,000. I stared at the screen. February. The same month he'd stood in our kitchen smiling. We need to reconnect. I'm taking you somewhere beautiful. Let's fix us. He'd already hired a divorce attorney. Before booking Charleston, before promising fresh starts, before kissing my forehead every morning, I closed the laptop slowly. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I finally understood the sequence. The vacation wasn't reconciliation. It was timing. The next Monday, I met attorney Rebecca Lawson. Her office overlooked a small park downtown. No dramatic speeches, no theatrical sympathy. She simply listened, then organized my documents into neat stacks, exactly the way I would have. I liked her immediately. When I finished, she folded her hands. Natalie, Ohio is a no-fault divorce state. The affair itself changes very little. I understand. But, she tapped the hotel receipt. Corporate expenses. Marital assets. That's another matter. I nodded. I thought so. She looked at me carefully. What exactly do you do at Ridgeway? I'm a senior financial analyst. What division? Internal compliance. Rebecca stopped writing. Internal compliance. Yes. She removed her glasses. Does your husband know you review expense reporting? He knows. And these hotel charges, they pass through company systems. Eventually. She sat back slowly, then asked the question that changed everything. Natalie, if this isn't isolated, are you prepared for where that leads? I didn't answer immediately, because I already knew. If Charleston wasn't an accident, then neither were Indianapolis, Dallas, Nashville, San Diego. Every client dinner, every conference, every weekend he'd been unavailable. Rebecca spoke gently. I can help end your marriage. But if company funds are being misused, that's no longer a divorce. That's corporate misconduct. I left her office carrying exactly the same folder I'd brought. Only now, it felt heavier. Not because there were more papers, because there were more consequences. Quarter-end reconciliation began 2 weeks later. Exactly as it always did. Routine. Predictable. My assignment landed in my inbox Monday morning. Regional Sales Division. Client Development. Cost Center 50 and 70. Michael's department. The same reports I'd reconciled every quarter for years. Nothing unusual. Until I compared 18 months instead of 3. One graph, one trend line. Travel expenses had increased. 43%. Client revenue, less than 5. That wasn't normal. Not even close. I ran the report again, then a third time. The numbers didn't change. Higher-end hotels, premium airfare, luxury dining, jewelry vendors. guest reservations without employee IDs. Everything, buried inside legitimate business travel. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, forklifts crossed the loading yard beneath my office window. Inside, I looked at one expense code after another, and suddenly realized something terrifying. Charleston wasn't unusual. Charleston was simply the first trip, where I'd been invited to. For nearly 10 minutes, I simply stared at the screen. 43%. That number refused to leave my mind. Client revenue had barely moved. Travel spending had exploded. One of those figures was lying. Maybe both. Most people imagine fraud as dramatic. Suitcases full of cash, fake signatures, secret offshore accounts. Real fraud is usually much quieter. It hides inside ordinary expenses. One upgraded room, one extra airline ticket, one dinner nobody questions because everyone assumes someone else already did. Enough ordinary things become extraordinary. I didn't print anything. I didn't email myself reports. I didn't photograph my screen. Company records belonged to the company. Rebecca had been crystal clear about that. Instead, I did exactly what my job required. I documented irregularities through normal compliance procedures. Nothing more. Nothing less. That afternoon, Michael stopped by my office. He rarely came to the 4th floor. Sales executives usually avoided compliance unless something had gone terribly wrong. He leaned casually against my doorway. "Lunch?" I smiled. "I've got quarter close. Still married to spreadsheets." He laughed, then looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. "You've seemed distant lately." "I'm busy. You're still upset about Charleston." "I'm still thinking about it." He nodded slowly. "I hate that." "I know. Maybe we should start over. Again. Start over." Michael loved fresh beginnings. They required no discussion of the previous ending. That Friday, a bouquet arrived at my desk. White lilies. My favorite. The entire 4th floor noticed. Someone whistled. Another coworker smiled. Looks like somebody's apologizing. A small white envelope rested inside the flowers. "To my beautiful Natalie, let's leave the past behind us." No signature. He didn't need one. I smiled politely, thanked the receptionist, waited until everyone returned to work. Then I looked closer. The florist receipt remained tucked beneath the arrangement. Ordered by Executive Administrative Services, not Michael. His assistant. Even his apology had been delegated. I placed the card inside my folder, not because it proved misconduct, because someday I didn't want to forget how it felt. The following Tuesday, another reconciliation crossed my desk. Vendor payments. Routine. Boring. Exactly the kind of report nobody remembers. Until line 47. Vendor. Harbor Jewelers. Charleston. Amount. $21.50. Expense category. Client relationship gift. Approved by Michael Brooks. I looked down instinctively. The sapphire bracelet still rested around my wrist. He'd given it to me on our anniversary, at dinner overlooking the harbor. I wanted something special. "I love you. I always will." Those had been his exact words. The company had apparently paid for loving me. I removed the bracelet slowly, held it in my palm. It suddenly felt much heavier. That evening, our kitchen again. Always the kitchen. Always the same island separating us. I placed the bracelet between us. Michael frowned. "What's wrong?" "Harbor Jewelers." He froze, only for a heartbeat, then recovered. "Oh, that. What about it?" "It was submitted under client gifts." So, why is my anniversary present classified as a business expense?" He sighed dramatically. "You've really been digging. I've been reconciling reports." "Same thing." "No, it isn't." He picked up the bracelet, turned it over thoughtfully. "Natalie, it's $2,000. Most wives would be grateful." There it was. Not an explanation. An invoice. He believed generosity erased accounting. I didn't ask how much it cost. I asked who paid. He smiled sadly. "You always make everything complicated." "No, I make things accurate." For the first time, Michael became irritated. "Fine. It was temporary. The company reimbursed me later." "When?" "I don't remember." "I do." He blinked. "What?" I checked. It never happened. Silence. Real silence. Then something unexpected happened. Michael sat down, rubbed both hands across his face. His voice changed, smaller somehow. "When I was 10, my dad lost everything. He stared at the countertop. We almost lost the house. My mother cried every night. I learned something. If people believe you're successful, they keep giving you chances. If they stop believing, everything disappears. I listened, because for the first time, he wasn't performing. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered. I needed everything to keep looking successful. His eyes finally met mine. I don't know another way. For one dangerous moment, I saw him exactly as he was. Not a salesman. Not a husband. Just a frightened little boy who believed appearances paid the bills. Compassion almost reached me. Almost. Then he smiled. That polished, practiced, executive smile. We're okay though, right? The moment vanished. The performer had returned. That night, I opened Ridgeway's ethics reporting portal. Every employee completed annual training on it. Anonymous reporting, protected disclosures, financial misconduct, conflict of interest. I helped update those policies. Now, they stared back at me. My cursor hovered above the reporting form. Rebecca's warning echoed inside my head. If you report this, it won't only affect your divorce. It could destroy his career. It could reduce your own settlement. I know. I saved the form. Closed my laptop. Didn't submit it. Not yet. 9 days passed. 9 days of ordinary life. Coffee, work, dinner, small conversations, separate bedrooms, neither of us mentioning the growing silence between us. On the 10th morning, Human Resources emailed me. Subject: temporary reassignment of financial review responsibilities. I frowned. Opened the message. Because of your personal relationship with Regional Sales Director Michael Brooks, your responsibilities involving sales division, reconciliations are being reassigned during your marital proceedings. I read it twice, then a third time. Michael had moved first. Again. By lunch, people were whispering, not loudly. Never loudly, just enough. She's going through his reports. Can't separate work from divorce. Poor Michael. Interesting. Nobody questioned the reports. Only the woman reading them. That evening, I drove home in complete silence. Parked in the driveway. Sat there without moving. Michael wasn't trying to disprove evidence anymore. He was quietly discrediting me. If nobody trusted the accountant, nobody needed to examine the accounting. I finally understood the strategy. It had never been about hiding numbers. It had always been about making sure nobody believed the person reading them. At 2:15 the next morning, I reopened my laptop, opened the ethics portal, scrolled slowly to the bottom, typed my full name, not anonymous, not hidden. Every sentence carefully documented. Every concern limited strictly to financial compliance. No accusations about affairs. No speculation. Only facts. Only records. Only numbers. Then, without rereading it again, I pressed submit. The confirmation number appeared immediately. Case RC24-1187. I copied it into my notebook. Closed the computer, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, I realized something. I wasn't trying to save my marriage anymore. I was trying to save myself. Compliance contacted me 3 business days later, not with accusations, not with congratulations, simply with an email. Please report to conference. Room B at 9 a.m. Thursday regarding case RC24-1187. No details, no opinions, just a meeting. That alone told me someone had taken the report seriously. The conference room was exactly what every conference room looks like. Gray carpet, white walls, coffee nobody wanted, a long polished table, 3 members of internal audit, 1 representative from legal, a court reporter, and a folder with my case number typed neatly across the front. No drama. Real investigations rarely look dramatic. They look organized. The lead investigator introduced himself. My name is David Mercer. He pushed a single sheet toward me. Mrs. Brooks, everything discussed here is confidential. You'll answer only what you personally know. No assumptions. No speculation. Understood? I understand. For almost 2 hours, he asked questions. Not once did he ask whether Michael had been unfaithful. Not once. Every question concerned procedures, expense approvals, travel policies, corporate billing, approval chains, system access, documentation, exactly the things I dealt with every day. I answered only what I knew. Nothing more, nothing less. When the interview ended, David closed the folder. Thank you. We'll take it from here. That was it. No promises, no predictions, just procedure. At home, Michael noticed immediately that something had changed. He watched me through dinner. Finally asked, "Everything okay at work?" "Fine. You seem different." "I've been busy." He studied my face, trying to read it. "For 13 years. He usually could. Not anymore." A week later, rumors spread through the building. Internal audit had frozen several executive expense accounts. No names, just whispers. People guessed. Nobody knew. Then, Michael started coming home earlier. Flowers appeared again. Dinner reservations. Movie nights. Small kindnesses. Almost desperately ordinary. As if normal routines could outrun an investigation. One evening, he stood beside me while I washed dishes. "Natalie, if something happened, if someone made a mistake, people deserve second chances." I continued rinsing a plate. "They do." He smiled with visible relief. "I knew you'd understand." I dried my hands carefully. "Second chances begin after someone tells the truth." The smile disappeared. 3 weeks later, internal audit requested a second interview. This one lasted only 20 minutes. Near the end, David Mercer said something I'll never forget. "The evidence didn't come from your report." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "Your report told us where to look." "The evidence," he tapped the folder, "was already inside our own systems." That mattered. It mattered more than he probably realized. I hadn't destroyed anyone. I had simply stopped ignoring what already existed. October arrived. On a Tuesday morning, Michael's office sat empty. His assistant quietly packed framed photographs into a cardboard box. No announcement. No gossip from management. Just an empty office. Around noon, an email reached every employee. Regional Sales Director Michael Brooks is no longer employed by Ridgeway Industrial Supply. No explanation. Corporate language rarely includes explanations. Later that afternoon, I learned more. Not from gossip. From Rebecca. Michael had been terminated for cause. Several expense reports had been falsified. Improper approvals. Misclassified travel. Corporate assets used for personal benefit. The total exceeded $40,000. His direct supervisor had also resigned during the investigation. I sat alone in my office, looking out toward the loading docks. Forklifts continued moving. Trucks continued arriving. Payroll still processed. Invoices still balanced. The company kept working. Strange how enormous personal tragedies barely interrupt ordinary Tuesdays. Michael called 6 times that evening. I answered once. He didn't say hello. He simply whispered, "You did this." I took a slow breath. "No." I reported what I found. "They were already your numbers." Silence. Then, "I've lost everything." I closed my eyes. So did I. The divorce became surprisingly simple. There wasn't much left to argue about. The house sold. The proceeds were divided after legal obligations. Financially, the settlement was smaller than it would have been had I stayed quiet. Rebecca had warned me. She'd been right. Truth isn't always profitable. In early spring, I moved into a modest apartment across town. Smaller kitchen, smaller bedroom, bigger windows. The first night there, I unpacked one box labeled "Office." Inside lay the sapphire bracelet, still in its velvet case. I stared at it for a long time, then drove downtown the following Saturday. The jeweler examined it carefully. Beautiful craftsmanship, excellent condition. After several minutes, he smiled politely. "I can offer exactly what it's worth." The amount was almost identical to the original purchase price. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because life occasionally has a sense of balance after all. I accepted. That money bought something very different. A comfortable reading chair, a floor lamp, and a small oak desk that faced my apartment window. Nothing extravagant. Everything honestly mine. No expense reports. No corporate approvals. No hidden costs. Months passed. Life became quieter. Not lonely, just peaceful. There is a difference. Women began stopping by my office occasionally, never announcing why. A payroll coordinator asking how I always stayed calm. A purchasing clerk wondering whether instincts should be ignored. Someone from human resources, quietly thanking me for doing the difficult thing. None of them asked about Michael. They asked about themselves. I understood why. One afternoon, as I closed another month-end reconciliation, I realized something. For years, I'd believed keeping the peace required silence. It doesn't. Real peace requires accuracy. Not perfection, just honesty. People still ask whether reporting him was worth losing the house. I always answer the same way. The house wasn't the price. The silence was. The house was simply what silence happened to cost. Sometimes I think back to that breakfast in Charleston, the coffee, the navy dress, the effortless way Erica ordered his breakfast before I could even open my menu. For a long time, I thought that was the moment my marriage ended. It wasn't. The marriage ended much earlier. That breakfast was simply the first time. I stopped explaining away what I already knew. If there's one thing I hope someone carries away from my story, it's this. People will tell you you're overthinking. Too sensitive, too careful, too quiet. Let them. Careful people notice what careless people miss. And sometimes, the smallest inconsistency is the first honest thing you've seen in years. The books eventually balance. They always do. The only question is whether your own name balances with them. Mine finally did.